A horse screamed in the dark. Hooves pounded the dirt. A rope cracked through the air. A man hit the ground hard, the breath ripped out of him. He heard the snap of a hammer cocking somewhere behind his head. He did not move. He did not breathe. He did not even blink. The boots that walked past him smelled of tobacco and wet leather. A second man laughed. A third spat. Then they were gone, and the only sound left was his own heart slamming against his ribs and the soft drumming of 3 sets of hooves disappearing into the brush. Cole Barrett pushed himself up onto one elbow. 3 horses. Gone. And not a soul for 40 miles who would lift a finger to help him get them back. What walked out of that brush 2 days later, he never saw coming. Stay with me on this one. Cole lay in the dirt for a long time after the hoofbeats faded. The cold worked its way into his bones first, then into his teeth. When he finally got up, the world tilted on him, and he had to grab the fence rail to keep from going back down. His mouth tasted like blood and dirt, and the cheap whiskey he had drunk before bed. He walked the half-mile to the house on legs that did not feel like his own. Inside, he sat at the kitchen table without lighting the lamp. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something colder. The kind of cold a man gets when he understands he has just lost the thing that was keeping him afloat. 3 horses. Not just any 3. The big bay was meant for the army contract he had spent 2 years setting up. The dun was the only mare on the place that threw foals worth selling. The third was the blue roan he had broken himself over the summer, the one a man in Cheyenne had already offered him $80 for, sight unseen. Take those 3 away, and what was left was an old man, an old mule, and a piece of land that ate more than it gave back. Now here is the thing you have to understand about Cole Barrett. He was 61 years old. His wife had been dead 9 years. His son had been dead 17. He worked the ranch alone. He took his coffee black because there was nobody to make it any other way. And the only reason he was still trying was because he did not know how to do anything else. When the sun came up, he saddled the mule and rode into town. The sheriff was a thin man named Hollies who had been thin for 40 years and looked tired for 30 of them. He listened to Cole. He nodded in the right places. Then he set his coffee down and said what Cole already knew he was going to say. I can write it up, Cole. I'll send word to the marshal in Ogallala. But 3 horses across open country with a head start. You know how this ends. Cole knew. He rode home slow. Halfway back, he passed the line shack out near the south fence. It was a 1-room cabin with a tin roof, leaned half a degree off true, and Cole had not used it for anything but storing salt blocks in years. 2 weeks earlier, a woman had come up the road on a thin gray horse. She had asked if she could rest there for a few days. She had a stiffness in her left leg that Cole had noticed straight off. She paid him in coin for the use of the place. She did not say where she was from. She did not say where she was going. She said her name was Hannah Wells. Cole had said yes. His wife had taught him a long time ago that you do not turn a person away who is hurting and not bothering anyone. So Hannah Wells stayed in the line shack and minded her own business, and Cole had barely seen her since. As he passed it now, he glanced at the chimney. No smoke. Nothing unusual in that. She kept odd hours. He rode on. He spent the afternoon doing what a man does when there is nothing left to do. He cleaned out the barn. He looked at the 3 empty stalls. He laid hay in them by habit, and then stopped halfway through because he understood there would be nothing to eat it. That evening, he sat on his porch and drank from a bottle he had been saving for a better night. He thought about selling the place. He thought about his wife. About the way she used to come out on the porch when the light was going and stand next to him without saying anything. She had been the talker between them, but at the end of a day, even she had nothing to say. He thought, too, about that old leather rifle scabbard hanging in the barn. The one she had used. He had not taken it down in 9 years. Could not bring himself to. Could not bring himself to throw it out either. He looked toward the line shack. The lamp was dark. He told himself she had probably just gone to bed early. But something low in his belly told him different. He stood up. He set the bottle on the rail. He walked toward the shack with the dark coming down around him, and he had a feeling he could not yet put a name to. The line shack was empty. Hannah Wells's bedroll was gone. Her saddlebags, her old single-shot rifle that he had only seen the once, when she had first arrived, and laid it across the table. Even her gray horse was gone. The only thing left was the smell of the small fire she had kept going for 2 weeks, and a folded piece of paper on the table, weighted down with a coffee cup. Cole picked it up. There were 4 words on it, in pencil in a tight, neat hand. Back when I am. That was all. He stood there for a long minute. The lamp he had brought guttered in the wind that came through the loose shutter. He set the paper back on the table. He set the cup back on the paper. Then he walked outside, and he understood. The horses had come past the south end of his property. The line shack sat almost on top of that south fence. She would have heard them go by. She would have heard the shouting, maybe even the shot they had fired into the air to scatter his stock. She had her own horse. She had her own gun. She had gone after them. A woman who walked with a limp. Alone. Into open country. After 3 armed men. Cole rode back to the house in the dark and did not sleep. In the morning, his neighbor George Ash came up the road on his old gelding. George was a wiry old Texan who had ranched the land just east of Cole's for 30 years. He climbed down stiff and shook his head before he had even gotten his feet planted. They got me too, Cole. 2 horses. Night before last. Cole nodded. Same bunch. Has to be, George spat. Sheriff Holly's come by my place yesterday on his way home from yours. He told me. 3 of them. Tall, dark, one with a scar through the lip. Cole's hands tightened on his coffee cup. He had not gotten a clear look at the men in the dark, but the one with the scar had been the one who spat near his head. Reedy's, George said. That was a name Cole had heard. 3 brothers, sons of a man who had been hung for murder up north of the Platte 10 years back. The brothers had carried the grudge of that hanging with them ever since. They hit ranches. They hit stagecoaches. They had killed at least 4 men that Cole knew about, 2 of them men he had drunk coffee with. Cole told George about Hannah. George went quiet. He looked off toward the south fence for a long time. Then he looked back. How long ago? Last night. Before midnight, I think. George shook his head slowly. Cole, I don't say this to be hard on you, but that woman is dead. Cole did not answer. You hear me? I hear you, George. George rode out a half-hour later. Cole stood on the porch and watched him go. Then he saddled the mule. The mule was 18 years old and had not been ridden hard in 3. Cole did not have a horse left to take, and he did not care. He filled a canteen. He took down his rifle. He took bread and jerky and the old leather scabbard from the barn, his wife's, because his own had broken at the buckle the year before, and he had never gotten around to replacing it. He rode south. The trail was easy at first. 3 horses, a 4th small one belonging to her, leave a clear story in the dust if you know how to read. He rode all morning. He crossed the dry creek. He rode into the broken country where the brush got thick and the rocks took over. By mid-afternoon, the trail was mostly gone, scattered by wind and broken ground. He kept going anyway. He rode until the light failed. He camped without a fire. He listened to the sounds of the country and slept maybe 2 hours total. When the dawn came, he rode again. By midday the second day, he had to admit that he was looking for a body. He had been telling himself otherwise. He had been telling himself that maybe she had circled, maybe she had gone north, maybe she was alive somewhere. But he had ridden for almost 2 days and seen nothing, and the country was big enough to swallow 10 women and never give one back. He turned the mule around. He rode home with the sun setting in his eyes. When he reached his ranch, he unsaddled the mule and brushed it down out of habit. He fed it. He came inside. He lit no lamp. He sat at the kitchen table in the dark for a long time. Then he stood up. He stoked the fire. He boiled water. He set out a tin cup. He filled it. He sat back down. He took the pipe down from the shelf. He filled it. He lit it. The smoke rose toward the rafters. Outside, the wind came up. The shutter on the kitchen window rattled twice and then went still. Cole sat there with his pipe and his water and his hands that no longer shook, and he thought about what came next. He would write to the army contract man and tell him there would be no horses. He would write his sister in Missouri and tell her he was thinking of selling. He would talk to George about taking the lower pasture off his hands. He had been a rancher for 35 years. He had buried a wife. He had buried a son. He had survived blizzards that killed half his stock and droughts that killed the other half. He had always come back. This time he would not come back. He took a slow pull from the pipe. He looked at the empty chair across the table where his wife used to sit. It was over. He had made his peace with it. The horses were gone. The woman was dead. The Reedies were riding off into some other country with his years living in their saddlebags, and Sheriff Hollies would write a letter, and nobody would come of it. He folded his hands. The room was quiet. It was over. Then he heard it. A sound he had not heard in 2 days. Hooves. Slow. Uneven. Not many. Walking, not running. Coming up his road from the south. He stood up so fast the chair skidded back behind him. The pipe fell out of his mouth and rolled across the table. He grabbed his rifle from the wall and was at the door before the next set of hoofbeats fell. He opened the door a crack. The dark was thick. The moon was a thin one. But there was movement at the edge of his yard, where the road came through the gap in the fence. A shape. More than one shape. He stepped out onto the porch with the rifle up. "Stand and call yourself," he said. No answer. The shape kept coming. Slowly. Very slowly. He could hear something dragging, something stumbling. Then she came into the lamplight that spilled out from his open door, and Cole Barrett's whole world stopped. Hannah Wells was on her feet. Barely. Her left side from the rib down to the hip was black with dried blood. Her face was streaked with it. Her hair had come loose from whatever knot she had tied it in. She walked with both hands on the lead rope, and behind her on that lead rope came 4 horses in a line. The Big Bay, the Dun, the Blue Roan, and her own thin gray. All 4. Coming home. Cole dropped the rifle on the porch and went to her. He came down the steps in 2 strides and caught her just as her knees buckled. She came down into his arms almost weightless. Her body was hot through her shirt. Her breath was rough and shallow. "You stupid woman," he said, and his voice broke on the words. She made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Got 'em back," she said. "Quiet now. Don't talk. Got 'em back, Cole." He scooped her up. She was small. She had always been small. He had not known until that moment that she weighed almost nothing. He carried her up the steps and through the door and laid her on the bed in the back room, the bed that had been his wife's and that he had not laid anyone in for 9 years. He cut her shirt away with his knife. The wound was just below her ribs on the left, a deep cut that had stopped bleeding only because she had run out of blood to give. He had seen wounds like it before. He had seen men die from less. He stoked the fire. He boiled water. He cleaned the wound. He stitched it with the heavy thread he used for harness and the curved needle from his tack box. She made no sound the whole time. She had passed out somewhere between the porch and the bed and had not come back yet. When he was done, he sat by the bed and watched her breathe. The horses were still standing in the yard on the lead rope where she had left them. He went out. He led them to the barn. He put the bay in his stall, the dun in hers, the blue roan in his. The gray he put in the empty stall at the end. He gave them water. He gave them grain. He brushed the worst of the road off them, working slowly, his hands steady now in a way they had not been steady for 2 days. When he came back inside, she was awake. Her eyes followed him as he crossed the room. He sat down by the bed. He looked at her for a long time before he said anything. "How," he said finally. She wet her lips, followed them. 2 days, her voice was a whisper. Caught up the second night. They had a fire. I shot the first one from the brush. The second one came at me with a pistol. I had the knife, she paused. Third one ran. Took me a half day to get him. He's the one who cut you. Hatchet. Cole closed his eyes. He had ridden through that country. He had seen no fire, no bodies, no sign. The Badlands swallowed everything. 3 Reedy brothers were out there somewhere, dead in a draw he had ridden past and not seen. She closed her eyes. Sleep, Hannah, he said. Cole. What? There's more of them. He went still. 2 cousins. Wyoming. They'll come. How long? 4 days. Maybe 5, her eyes opened. They were dark and very tired. I had to tell you. Before the fever. I'm listening. I'm sorry. I brought it to your door. He looked at her. He looked at this small, wounded woman who had walked into his line shack 2 weeks ago and asked for nothing but a roof, and had now killed 3 men and ridden 2 days bleeding to bring his livelihood back to him. You did not bring it, he said. It was already at my door. You made it cost them something. She closed her eyes again. Sleep, he said. She slept. Now look. If you have come this far with me, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. There is a lot more to this one, and I do not want you to miss what comes next. Because what came next was the fever. It took her hard. It took her by the time the sun was up. She burned. She tossed. She muttered names Cole did not know. A man's name. A boy's name. The same 2 names, over and over, like a prayer that had never been answered. He sat by the bed. He cooled her with rags and with water from the well. He fed her broth she could barely swallow. For 2 days he did not leave that room, except to tend the horses and watch the road. Because 2 cousins were coming. And Cole Barrett had a debt now that he meant to pay before the fever took her, or after. But pay it he would. The fever broke on the 3rd night. Cole had been dozing in the chair by the bed. He woke because the breathing in the room had changed. Hannah was looking at him. Her eyes were clear for the first time since she had walked out of the brush. Water, she said. He brought her water. She drank slow. How long? 3 days. They coming? Not yet. She nodded. She sank back. She slept again, but a real sleep this time, an honest sleep, and Cole knew without having to be told that she would live. He sat with her until the dawn came. When the light was good, he asked her, "Hannah, why?" She knew what he meant. She was quiet for a while. He thought maybe she would not answer. Then she did. "I had a husband once," she said, "and a boy. We had a place near Laramie. 3 rustlers came one night. My husband stood up to them. They shot him in the kitchen. My boy ran. They shot him in the yard. I was in the cellar. They didn't find me." Cole did not move. "I came up after. I buried them both myself. It took me a day and a night. I was 26 years old. And then I rode out after the men who did it. I tracked them 6 weeks. I found them in a town in the Black Hills. I waited. I picked them off one at a time. The last one was the hardest. He saw me coming. He put a bullet in my hip before I put one in his head. That's the limp." "How long ago?" 8 years. "And you have been drifting, working ranches, not staying anywhere." "I never wanted to be anywhere again." Cole sat with that. "And then those 3 rode past my line shack." "Yes." "And you went after them." "Yes." "For me." She looked at him. "No, Cole. Not for you." He nodded slowly. He had thought as much. For who then? For the next ones. He did not understand at first. "There are always next ones," she said. "There are always the ones who think they can just take. From a man like you. From a boy in a yard. From anyone they think won't fight. Every one of them you stop is 1,000 who don't have to lose what I lost." She paused. "I wasn't going to let it happen on the same patch of ground twice." Cole sat for a long time after that. The sun came in through the window. It crossed the floor. He stood up. He went to the kitchen. He made coffee. He brought a cup back to her, and she drank it sitting up on her own elbow. That afternoon, he started getting ready. He cleaned his rifle. He cleaned hers, the long single shot which she handed to him without a word. He counted his shells. He counted hers. He set them both, loaded, by the front window. He walked the yard. He looked at the road. He decided where he would stand if it came to standing. 2 more days passed. She got stronger. She could sit up. She could walk a few steps with the cane he carved her from a hickory limb. On the morning of the 5th day, the dust came up the road. 2 riders. Cole was on the porch when they came into the yard. He had his rifle leaning against the post. He did not pick it up. He just stood. The riders stopped 20 feet from the porch. They were both tall men. Hard men. The older one had a face like worked leather. The younger one had eyes that did not sit still in his head. "You Cole Barrett," the older one said. "I am. We hear you got a woman here." "You hear right. You're going to bring her out." "No." The older man smiled. It was not a good smile. "Mister, we don't want trouble with you. We just want the woman. Our blood is on her. You understand?" "I understand." "Then bring her out." "No." The younger one moved his hand to his hip. What happened next happened very fast. Cole had spent a lifetime around men like these. He had spent a lifetime around horses. He knew the moment a horse was about to bolt and the moment a man was about to draw, and they were the same moment, and you saw it in the eyes both times. The younger one drew. Cole had his rifle up before the pistol cleared leather. He fired once. The younger one came off his saddle backwards and hit the ground and did not move. The older one drew. His shot went past Cole's ear and took a chunk out of the porch post. Cole's second shot took the older one in the chest. The man sat down on his horse very slowly, like he had just remembered something, and then he slid sideways out of the saddle. But Cole had felt the bite of the man's first shot. He looked down. There was blood on his shirt above his shoulder. The bullet had gone through the meat of him, not the bone. From inside the house, he heard a third shot. He turned. Hannah was at the window with her single-shot rifle braced on the sill. The older Reedy cousin had not died on the ground. He had pulled a hideout pistol. He was not going to pull anything else now. There was a small dark hole between his eyes. She lowered the rifle. She slumped against the wall. The yard was quiet. Cole looked at the two men on the ground. He looked at the woman in the window. He looked at the 3 horses in the corral that she had brought home. And the question that had been waiting at the back of his throat for 5 days, the question he had not let himself ask out loud, finally came clear. Why was he still here? Why had he kept going for 35 years? Why had he gotten up the morning after his wife died, and the morning after his son died, and every morning since? Because nobody had asked him to stop. Because somebody might still need him to be standing. Hannah had walked out of that brush and reminded him. He did not sell the ranch. He did not write his sister in Missouri. He did not talk to George Ashe about the lower pasture. He buried the 2 Reedy cousins out past the south fence, in a stretch of land where nothing grew, where coyotes came and went and the wind never let up. He marked the graves with 2 flat stones and no names. They had not earned names. The sheriff came out 3 days later. Holly stood in the yard a long time looking at the porch post that had been chunked out by the older man's bullet. He looked at the dirt where the men had fallen and at the stones out by the south fence. He did not say much. Cole told him the whole of it. He did not leave anything out, including Hannah. Hollis listened. He nodded at the right places, the way he always had. When Cole was done, the sheriff was quiet for a while. You know, he said finally, the Reedy brothers had paper on them. All 3. And the cousins. There was a bounty out of Wyoming. Modest, but real. He took an envelope out of his coat. He held it out. That's the part I can settle for the brothers. The cousins, that takes a few weeks. But it'll come. Cole took the envelope. Inside was more money than he had seen in one place in 2 years. Enough to replace his stock. Enough to buy seed. Enough to put in a new well in the south pasture. Enough to live on, with care, into the next year. Hannah came out onto the porch then. She was leaning on the cane. She had heard. The sheriff looked at her. He took his hat off slowly. Ma'am, he said, if anyone in town knew it was you that did the thing, this money would be yours. She looked at the envelope in Cole's hand. She looked at Cole. It's not mine, she said. It is, Cole said. I didn't do it for money. I know that. Then I don't take money for it. The sheriff looked between them. He put his hat back on. He cleared his throat. I'll be going, he said. He went. That night they sat at the kitchen table with the envelope between them. The lamp was lit. The fire was warm. The coffee had been poured twice already. Half Cole said. No. Half Hannah. You earned it. Take it. Or do not take it, but let me put it in your name, in the bank in Cheyenne. For when you need it. Because someday you will. She did not answer right away. She looked at the envelope. Then she looked up at him. Half, she said. He nodded. The week after, she could walk without the cane some hours of the day. She moved slow. She would always move slow. The new wound had not helped the old one, and Cole understood that this was a woman who would limp until they buried her. But she was up, and she was on his porch in the morning, and she was at the corral in the afternoons, brushing down the blue roan, slow strokes, side to side, the way a person does who has done it 1,000 times before. One evening Cole walked out to the corral and stood beside her. He watched her work the brush down the roan's flank. "Hannah, I never thanked you proper." She did not stop brushing. "You didn't owe me one." "I know," he said. "That's the part I had to learn." She paused. She turned to him. "What part?" "That a person can do a thing for you, and you do not owe them. You just live up to it. That's all. You just live up to it." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she went back to brushing. He stood with her until the light failed. She stayed 2 more weeks at the line shack. The morning she was leaving, she came up to the house with her gray horse saddled and her old single shot in the scabbard. The bandage was off her side. The cane was tied to her saddle. She looked thinner than when she had come, but her eyes were steady. Cole came out onto the porch. "You're going." "I'm going." "Where?" "North. There's a woman near the Powder River who runs a place. Husband died last spring. She's getting old. She wrote me she could use a hand." He nodded. "You ever want to come back? I know where you are." "I know you do." She climbed up into the saddle. She did it slow, but she did it without help, and that mattered to her, he could tell. She looked down at him. "Cole." "What?" "Stand straight." "I'm standing." "Stand straight a long time." He smiled then. It was the first smile he had smiled in a long while, and he could feel how unfamiliar it was on his face. "I will." She rode out. He watched her go all the way to the bend in the road. He watched her until the dust settled. He watched the road for a long time after that. Then he turned and walked back to the barn. The 3 horses were in their stalls. The big bay raised its head when he came in. The dun made the soft sound she made when she was glad to see him. The blue roan stood quiet, the way the blue roan always did. Cole stood there in the middle of his barn. He had been a rancher for 35 years. He had buried a wife. He had buried a son. He thought he had nothing left to learn. Then a woman who limped came out of the brush. Leading 3 horses, she had no obligation to bring back. And she taught him the only thing a man like him still needed to know. That you keep standing. You keep standing until somebody walks out of the brush and tells you it is time to sit down. And until that day comes, you stand.